owned Florida in the early 1800s was a wild place. It was a land of thick forests, wide swamps, and a long coastline. Spain owned Florida then, but Spain's hold was weak. They had few people there. Their soldiers were spread thin. Their forts were old and falling apart. America, a young country, was growing fast. It had just bought a huge area called Louisiana from France. This made America feel bigger. But leaders in Washington wanted more. They looked south. They looked at Florida. They saw it as very important for their country's future. Many reasons pushed America to want Florida. One big reason was its location. Florida jutted out into the Gulf of Mexico. It controlled important shipping lanes. It was also a haven for outlaws and for enslaved people who ran away. These runaway slaves often found safety with the Seminole people. The Seminoles were Native Americans living in Florida. They sometimes attacked American settlements right across the border in Georgia. This made American slave owners angry. It made people in border towns feel unsafe. The border itself was a problem. It was not clear in many spots. This led to arguments. People would cross it, some to farm, some to hunt, some to cause trouble. Spain could not really control its side. America felt it couldn't control its own border either, with all the chaos from Florida. The American settlers had already started moving south. They lived very close to Spanish land. They saw Florida as their next natural step. They often felt Spain was in their way. They thought America should own all the land it could. This idea was later called manifest destiny. But the feeling was there already. It was a belief that America was meant to grow. Also, many British loyalists had moved to Florida after the American Revolution. They didn't like the new United States. They were still there, and sometimes Britain still showed interest in Florida. This worried American leaders. They didn't want a hostile foreign power so close, especially one that could work with Native American tribes or runaway slaves. So Florida became a hotspot. It was a place of danger and new chances. For Spain, it was a burden. For America, it was a prize. And some Americans living near that border decided they couldn't wait for the government in Washington. They wanted to take action themselves. They thought they could make Florida American. They even thought they could create their own new country there, just for a short time, until America would take it. This wasn't just a few random people. Important figures were involved. Even some people in the U.S. government knew about these plans. They didn't openly support them. Not at first, but they also didn't stop them. They kind of looked away. They hoped these local efforts might do the job for them. Without getting the U.S. into an official war with Spain, this was a risky game. It was a game played with secrets and whispers. It was a game played on the edge of the known world, in a wild, untamed land, a land America wanted very much. The idea to take Florida did not just pop up. It grew over time, mostly in Georgia. People there were very frustrated. They lived with all the problems Florida brought. Attacks from Native Americans, enslaved people running away, the constant feeling of an unsafe border. Well, they talked about it all the time. One main person in this was George Matthews. He had been a governor of Georgia. He was old, but he was strong. He had fought in the Revolutionary War. He strongly believed America should expand. He thought Florida should be part of America. He also knew many people in Washington. President James Madison and his Secretary of State, James Monroe, knew Matthews. They also wanted Florida. But they had to be careful. America was not strong enough to just invade a Spanish colony. That would mean war with Spain, and maybe even with Britain, who was friends with Spain. So they came up with a secret plan. The plan was like this: America would pretend not to be involved. Matthews would go to Florida. He would cause trouble. He would encourage American settlers living in Florida to revolt against Spain. These settlers would then form their own republic. They would say they were independent. Then, this new republic would ask America to take it in, to make it part of the United States. This way, America wouldn't be invading, it would just be accepting a request from a free people. It was a clever but very dishonest trick. Matthews was made a commissioner by the U.S. government. His official job was to talk with the Spanish, to fix border problems, but his real secret job was to start the revolt. He had money. He had a small group of U.S. Army soldiers nearby. They were there to protect the border, but really, they were there to help the Patriots, which is what the rebels called themselves. And Matthews gathered men. Most of these men were from Georgia. They were frontiersmen. They were adventurers. They were people who wanted land. Some truly loved America. They believed in the country. Others just wanted land, or excitement, or a chance to get rich. They called themselves the Patriots of East Florida. They planned to take East Florida. This was the eastern part of the Florida Peninsula. It included the main city, St. Augustine. and a key port called Fernandina on Amelia Island. Fernandina was important. It was a place for trade and for illegal goods. It was also close to the Georgia border. The plan looked simple on paper. The Patriots would cross the St. Mary's River. This river was the border between Georgia and East Florida. They would march on Fernandina, take it, then declare they were independent. Then they would go to St. Augustine. The Spanish there would be surprised. They would have no choice but to give up. But there was a big problem. There were not many American settlers in East Florida who wanted to revolt. Most of the people there were Spanish or black or Native American or British loyalists. They did not necessarily want to join America. They did not want to be part of some patriot republic. The whole idea was based on the lie that the people of East Florida wanted this. Most of them did not. Even with this problem, Matthews went forward. He believed in the mission. He believed America needed Florida. He was a determined man. He saw that Spain was weak. He saw the chance. The stage was set for a strange kind of invasion, one where the attackers pretended to be setting people free, and the U.S. government pretended to be an innocent observer. In March of 1812, the plan began. George Matthews and his patriots were ready. They had gathered near the St. Mary's River. This river marked the edge between Georgia and Spanish East Florida. On the Florida side was Amelia Island, and on that island was Fernandina, a small but important port town. The Patriot force had about 250 men. Most were from Georgia. They were rough men. They were armed. They were ready to fight. But they also had a secret help U.S. Navy gunboats. These boats, led by Commodore Hugh Campbell, were waiting in the St. Mary's River. They were supposed to be neutral, but everyone knew they were there to help the Patriots. On March 16, 1812, the Patriot Army crossed the river. They marched on Fernandina. The town was defended by a small Spanish group of soldiers and a Spanish gunboat. The Spanish leader, Don Justo Lopez, saw the U.S. gunboats. He knew what was happening. He knew he was outnumbered. He did not want a lot of people to die. He surrendered Fernandina without a real fight. This was a big success for the Patriots and a huge win for Matthews. They had taken a key port. Now the next step was to declare their republic. The Patriots quickly set up a temporary government. They made a statement. They called themselves the Republic of Florida. They said they were free from Spain. They asked for protection from the United States. It was all a show, of course. A very weak one. But the plan was not just about Fernandina. The real prize was St. Augustine. This was the main city of East Florida. It had the Castillo de San Marcos, a strong stone fort. It was a symbol of Spanish power. The Patriots knew they needed it to truly control East Florida. So, after Fernandina, the Patriot Army, now joined by some U.S. Army soldiers who were supposed to be guarding the border, marched towards St. Augustine. This was a long, hard walk, through swamps and thick woods. The Spanish forces in St. Augustine, led by Governor Sebastian Kindleman, were ready. They were not going to give up easily like Fernandina. The Patriots surrounded St. Augustine. They set up camps. They tried to starve the Spanish out, but the Castillo de San Marcos was strong. The Spanish had enough food and supplies, and they had a small but determined group of soldiers and local people who volunteered. The surrounding of St. Augustine was not going well for the Patriots. They did not have large cannons. They could not break down the fort's walls. They also faced resistance from unexpected places. Many of the local people in East Florida, including free black people and Seminoles, sided with the Spanish. They did not want to be part of an American-backed republic. They fought back. They attacked Patriot supply lines. They launched quick, surprise attacks. The Patriots started to get tired. The fighting was hard. Conditions were bad. Sickness spread in their camps. They were not getting the easy victory they expected. George Matthews was getting old and sick. His secret mission was becoming less secret, and more of a problem for the U.S. government. Meanwhile, news of the Republic of Florida and the U.S. involvement started to spread. It caused big diplomatic trouble. Spain was furious. Britain, already fighting the U.S. in the War of 1812, was also angry. President Madison and Secretary Monroe started to change their minds. They realized this whole plan was too dangerous. It was causing too many problems. They worried it might lead to a bigger war, one they were not ready for. The Republic of Florida had been born, but it was already struggling to survive. The Republic of Florida was weak from the very start. It existed mostly on paper, in the minds of a few hundred American patriots. The people of East Florida mostly did not support it. This was its biggest flaw. The Spanish, under Governor Kindleman, used this to their advantage. They put together local groups of fighters. These included Spanish settlers, free black people, and Seminole warriors. They fought fiercely against the Patriots. The siege of St. Augustine continued. It was a standoff. The Patriots could not take the fort. The Spanish could not completely drive the Patriots away. Both sides suffered from illness and not enough supplies. The whole thing was costing a lot of money. And the US government was paying for much of it, still pretending they were not. But the pretense was getting harder to keep up. Spain officially complained to the United States. Britain, already at war with the US, the War of 1812 began in June 1812, saw this as another aggressive act by America. They accused the US of being fake. Madison and Monroe were under pressure. The cost of the secret operation was becoming too high. In April 1812, President Madison decided to disown George Matthews. He sent another commissioner, Governor David Mitchell of Georgia, to replace him. Madison publicly said that Matthews had gone too far beyond his orders. This was how the U.S. government tried to separate itself from the failed invasion. It was a political move. Matthews was very angry. He felt betrayed. He believed he had done exactly what he was told. He died on his way to Washington to confront Madison. With Matthews gone, the Patriot movement lost its main leader. The U.S. troops, who had been secretly helping the Patriots, were now officially told to leave. This happened in early 1813. The reason given was the ongoing War of 1812. The U.S. needed its soldiers elsewhere. But the real reason was that the Florida operation had failed, and it was causing too many problems. When the U.S. troops left, the Republic of Florida fell apart. The remaining Patriots were left alone. They had to face the Spanish and their allies by themselves. Many of the Patriots were killed. Some were captured. Others ran back to Georgia. The dream of an independent, American-backed Florida Republic was over. The Spanish quickly took back full control of East Florida. They punished those who had sided with the Patriots. They made St. Augustine and Fernandina stronger. They were angry, and they had every right to be. The U.S. had tried to take their land by lying and using a hidden war. The whole event was a big embarrassment for the United States. It showed how far some American leaders would go to expand the country, but it also showed the limits of such a plan. Without strong local support, and with other countries watching, a fake republic could not last. The idea of a simple, quick takeover of Florida had proven to be just a dream. The problems from this event would last for years. The U.S. still wanted Florida, but they would have to find a different way to get it. One that was more direct and more honest. The failed Republic of Florida plan had a clear result: Spain kept Florida. For a few more years, anyway. The whole event made relations worse between the United States and Spain. It made Spain even more suspicious of what America wanted, and it made them even less willing to sell Florida. But America's desire for Florida did not go away. Not for the U.S. The issues that made Florida important to America remained. The border was still a problem. Runaway slaves still found safety there. Native American raids continued. And with the War of 1812 over, the U.S. felt stronger. It was more confident. So, while the Patriot War failed, it wasn't the end of America's search for Florida. It was more like a rough try. A failed experiment. It showed what would not work. It showed that secret operations and fake republics were too messy and too risky. The U.S. needed a more direct way. This came in 1818 with General Andrew Jackson. He led an army into Florida. This was during the First Seminole War. Jackson said he was chasing Seminole raiders. But he went far beyond that. He captured Spanish forts. He executed British people he accused of helping the Seminoles. This was clearly breaking Spanish rules. Spain was furious again, but they were also weak. They were dealing with revolts in their South American colonies. They could not really defend Florida. They could not afford a war with the United States. And the U.S. Under Secretary of State John Quincy Adams was very tough. Adams basically told Spain to either control Florida well or sell it. This led to the Adams-Onis Treaty in 1819. It is also known as the Transcontinental Treaty. In this treaty, Spain finally gave Florida to the United States. They did not get much for it. Mostly, the U.S. gave up its claim to Texas and agreed to pay some American citizens' claims against Spain. The treaty was approved in 1821, and with that, Florida officially became a U.S. territory. So, the dream of an American Florida came true, just not through the Patriot scheme. The attempt to create a Republic of Florida was a strange side story in history. It was a time when America tried to expand its borders without directly fighting for them. A kind of early, clumsy try at fighting through others. What does it teach us? It shows how strong the idea of American expansion was back then. It shows how far people would go, even if it meant making up a country. It also shows how hard it is to build a nation. Even when a powerful neighbor helps, a republic, even a fake one, needs real support from the people to last. The Patriots did not have that. The impact of this event is small. It is not a major turning point like the Louisiana Purchase, but it is a piece of the puzzle. It shows how aggressive early American foreign policy could be. It highlights the complex role of Native Americans and free black people in these border conflicts. And it reminds us that history is often stranger and more complicated than we think. It is full of secret plans, failed rebellions, and the often unseen hands of powerful nations pulling strings. The Republic of Florida was one such string. It broke. But America got Florida in the end anyway. Well, just in a different way.